The courtroom was silent. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that pressed down on your lungs like the walls themselves were holding their breath. Major Walter Briggs sat at the defense table in his neatly pressed suit, not a single medal pinned to his chest. He'd left them in a drawer at home. Today wasn't about who he had been. It was about what he refused to become. Next to him on the floor sat Shadow, a black German shepherd with graying fur around his muzzle. His amber eyes scanned the room, calm, alert, unaware that the system had labeled him a danger to society. Across the aisle, the prosecutor stood. "Your Honor," she said, voice sharp, steady. "We are here today because a civilian was mauled, bitten, permanently disfigured by this dog." She pointed, but Shadow didn't flinch, didn't growl, didn't even blink. She turned back to the judge, and while the defense claims the incident was a misunderstanding, let the court be clear: this animal is a weapon, trained for combat, conditioned for aggression. Walter's fingers tightened on the table edge, but he said nothing. The judge looked over his glasses. "Major Briggs, you are the registered handler of K9 Shadow. Do you understand the severity of the charges against him?" Walter finally spoke. His voice was quiet, measured. "I do, Your Honor." "And do you intend to contest the state's claim that Shadow acted with intent to harm?" A long pause. Everyone leaned in. Walter's jaw clenched. "No, Your Honor," he said. Gasps rippled across the room. The prosecutor's eyes widened, almost surprised at how easy it was. The young woman beside Walter, his public defender, whispered urgently, "Major, what are you doing?" Walter didn't answer. His eyes drifted down to Shadow, who looked up at him, ears flicking, tail still. There was no fear in the dog's eyes, only trust. And Walter knew. This wasn't just a trial, it was a decision. He had taught Shadow to protect others at all costs. Now, it was his turn to return the favor. It was the kind of heat that made the air shimmer. Afghanistan, 2010. A valley carved by centuries of war and silence that always meant danger. Major Walter Briggs moved cautiously down a narrow pass. His unit was scattered across the ridge, eyes up, fingers tense. Beside him, younger, faster, unscarred Shadow. No one called him that then. He was K947-9A. Just another asset, just another tool. Until the ground spoke. A deafening blast, metal screaming, dirt raining. The world turned sideways. Walter hit the rocks hard, ears ringing, blood in his mouth. He opened his eyes to fire, confusion, and silence, except for a sound, sharp, barking, closer. Shadow, dragging something. No, dragging him. His vest caught in the dog's teeth. His body pulled inch by inch away from the wreckage. Gunfire cracked above, echoed. Shadow growled once, deep and low, then pivoted, snarled into the dust. He lunged. A figure fell, then another. When the medevac finally touched down, 2 soldiers were dead. Walter would spend 6 months in rehab, but Shadow, he never left the hospital bedside. Not once. Doctors said it was instinct. Walter knew better. It was loyalty, unfiltered, unquestioning. And in that bed, half broken, half breathing, he'd reached out, touched Shadow's head and whispered, "You're not just a dog anymore. You're mine." The next morning, the courtroom was packed. Reporters, veterans, curious citizens who'd read the headlines, "Retired Major's dog on trial after vicious attack." War hero or public menace. The prosecutor stood before the screen. She clicked the remote. Images appeared. Blurry, desaturated, combat photography. Shadow in uniform, vest marked K9 Unit 47-9A. Leaping, tracking, attacking. The room was quiet. "This," she said, "is the dog you're defending." She clicked again. A still frame of Shadow lunging midair. Teeth bared, muzzle streaked with dust and blood. This is not a family pet. This is a trained killer. Bred and built for conflict. Walter sat motionless, but inside he was boiling. She moved closer to the jury. We're not judging what happened on a battlefield 10 years ago. We're judging what happened at a park, in a peaceful city, where an 8-year-old boy watched his uncle get mauled in front of him. Gasps. The public defender stood. Objection. No confirmed proof the dog initiated the attack. The judge raised a hand. Sustained. Stick to facts, counselor. The prosecutor nodded, then looked at Walter. Major Briggs, would you agree this dog has been trained to neutralize threats with deadly force? Walter's jaw tightened. Yes. And do you believe a child or civilian would know how to avoid triggering those instincts? Silence. Walter looked down at Shadow, still, calm, watching, and he whispered, "No." The prosecutor smiled faintly. No further question. The courtroom doors opened with a creak. All eyes turned as a young man in his 20s entered, escorted to the stand. Slim build, nervous eyes, a jacket one size too big. His name, Eric Marlowe, the victim's nephew. The prosecutor approached. "Eric, tell us what happened the day of the attack." He swallowed hard. "I was walking with my uncle. We were at the park. He was smoking. I remember that. We saw a man sitting on a bench with a big dog, looked military. Did that dog approach you?" "No. We walked past." "What happened next?" Eric hesitated. "My uncle, he said something to the man. I don't know what. I wasn't really paying attention. Then it all happened fast. The dog jumped, bit him. Blood everywhere. He started shaking slightly. Everyone screamed. I pulled my uncle back. He was screaming." "Did the man say anything?" "Yeah, he said. He warned you." Murmurs in the courtroom. The prosecutor turned to the jury. No further questions. The defense attorney stood. Young, smart, uncertain. "Eric, you said the dog was sitting calmly?" "Yes." "Did your uncle make any sudden moves toward the dog? Raise his hand? Step close?" I think so." "And was your uncle holding anything?" Eric paused. "Yeah, a walking stick. He waved it around sometimes. Habit, I guess." The attorney leaned in. "Did the dog lunge before or after the stick was waved?" Eric blinked. I think after. Could it be that the dog perceived a threat? That he reacted the way he was trained to protect?" Eric looked unsure. "I don't know. Maybe." No one moved. Even the judge leaned forward. The attorney turned to the jury. No further questions. The bailiff carried in a thick folder. Red-tagged, stamped classified. Released for trial use only. The prosecutor opened it with care, like she was handling a live wire. "Your Honor," she began, "what we have here is the official deployment file of K9 Unit 47-9A. Codename Shadow." The judge nodded. "Proceed." The prosecutor tapped the screen again. A scanned report appeared. 6 tours of duty. 17 confirmed threat neutralizations. 2 handler citations for extreme obedience under fire. She faced the jury. This dog was bred and trained for military enforcement. He's seen war. Blood. Explosions. Bodies. Click. A new page appeared. Medical report, Year 7. Signs of stress reactivity. PTSD indicators. Trigger response to loud voices and hand gestures noted. The courtroom buzzed. The defense attorney stood. "May I approach?" She walked to the screen, pointing at a note at the bottom. Handler's note. Dog calms only in presence of Major Walter Briggs. Refuses food, water, or rest, unless within proximity. She turned to the jury. This isn't just a weapon. This is a wounded soldier. One who can't speak for himself. The prosecutor frowned. A soldier still capable of violence. The judge held up his hand. "We are here to decide intent, not capacity." Continue. The next page came up. Civilian encounters, 43. Reported incidents. The attorney turned back to the court. No attacks. No incidents. Not one bite. Until that day in the park. Her voice lowered. Maybe that says something. The defense table was quiet. Major Walter Briggs hadn't moved in over an hour. Not a twitch, not a word. Until now, his attorney leaned in. "Major, they're painting him as a monster." Walter's hands tightened. The judge cleared his throat. "Defense may call its next witness." The courtroom shifted. Whispers died down, and Walter stood. He walked to the stand with slow, deliberate steps. Not out of weakness, out of weight. The bailiff swore him in. "State your name for the record." "Major Walter Briggs, retired." "Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth?" "I do." The defense attorney stepped forward. "Major, how long have you worked with Shadow?" 14 years. "And has he ever attacked anyone without cause?" Walter looked up, eyes sharp. "No." "Can you explain what happened at the park?" Walter inhaled. "We were sitting, quiet. I was reading. Shadow was lying at my feet." He paused. A man walked by, loud, waving something. Got too close. Shadow stood. Didn't growl. Didn't bark. He stood. The courtroom leaned in. The man raised a stick. Fast. Aggressive. Shadow reacted. He clenched his fist. Not to attack. To protect. Protect who? Walter's eyes burned. "Me." A beat. Just like he did in Sanyan when I was bleeding out. Just like he did in Kandahar, when he ran into gunfire to drag a wounded soldier back. He turned toward the jury. "I trained him to keep me alive, and now I'm here to keep him from being destroyed, because someone didn't know the difference between a dog protecting and a dog attacking." Silence. Even the judge looked down for a second. Walter's voice dropped to a whisper. "I know what I saw that day, and I know what I owe him." The courtroom was still echoing with Briggs' final words when the back door creaked open. A woman stepped in. Leather jacket. Satchel across her shoulder. Press badge clipped to her collar. Kara Lenz. Independent journalist. The kind who didn't chase stories. She unburied them. She walked straight to the defense table. Slipped a USB drive to the attorney. "Play this," she whispered. "It was never supposed to see daylight." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Who is this?" "She has new evidence, Your Honor," the defense replied. "Relevant to the incident." The judge hesitated, then nodded. "Proceed." The courtroom lights dimmed as the screen lit up. Grainy footage. A shaky cell phone video from a car parked near the park. No sound. Just wind and movement. The jury leaned in. They saw Walter on the bench, Shadow lying down. Then the man approached. Slow at first, then sudden. He raised a stick, waved it above his head and brought it down. Shadow shot teeth bared, not at the man's body, at the stick. He didn't bite the man. He grabbed the wood, pulled it down. The man tripped, fell on his own arm. There was no attack, only interception, only instinct. The video ended. Silence. The judge turned slowly to the prosecutor. "Do you still believe this dog intended harm?" The prosecutor didn't answer. The journalist stepped forward. "I was working on a piece about military K9 trauma. A source gave me that clip. Told me it had been suppressed. Park cameras were wiped. But this was truth in the background." She looked at Walter. "And I couldn't let it stay buried." The judge folded his hands. Admissible and powerful. The lights came back on, but the room stayed in the dark. No one moved. No one whispered. The video had hit them like a wave, soft but unstoppable. The judge leaned forward. "Counselor," he said to the prosecutor, "do you wish to redirect?" She stood, slowly, walked toward the jury, but didn't speak. She glanced at Shadow, still seated, still calm. Her voice was different now, not sharp, not accusing, measured. "We were told this dog attacked a man without provocation," she began. "That he was dangerous, unstable." She looked at Walter, and that his handler was covering for him. She turned to the screen, now black again. But what we saw was not rage. It wasn't blind instinct. It was calculated, trained, controlled. She turned back to the jury. This wasn't an attack. It was a response to a perceived threat. The courtroom was full. People stood shoulder to shoulder along the back walls. Veterans in uniform, families with children, reporters with pens half raised, but no one spoke. The bailiff entered, held a folded paper in hand. All rise. The jury returned. 12 faces. Some solemn, some tired. All changed. The foreman stood. We, the jury, find the defendant. Canine Shadow. A pause. Walter's hand rested gently on Shadow's back. The foreman continued. Not responsible for the alleged attack. We rule that the dog acted in defense of his handler and did not engage in unjustified violence. Gasps. A few claps. Then silence again. The judge nodded. Let the record show. Canine Shadow is cleared of all charges. He is no longer under threat of euthanasia or state custody. He looked directly at Walter. Major Briggs, your service to this country continues in silence, in loyalty, and in love. He brought down the gavel. Court is adjourned. The room exhaled. Reporters surged forward. Flashes, questions, microphones. But Walter didn't say a word. He looked at Shadow, who stood, quietly, then leaned into his handler's leg. Walter smiled, and walked them both out the side door, into the sun, into freedom. The next morning, the story was everywhere. Front pages, evening news, social feeds flooded with one name. Shadow, military dog cleared of all charges, after dramatic trial. Retired major's loyalty, saves K9 from state execution. A photo Walter walking out of the courthouse. Shadow by his side. Tail just barely wagging. Hashtags trended. He saved me, I saved him. K9 hero. Justice for Shadow. People who had never cared about military dogs were suddenly invested. Veterans began sharing their stories. Dog handlers posted old photos. Gritty and quiet. Mothers talked about how their kids now asked, would Shadow have protected me too? Letters poured in, from school children, from soldiers, from people who had never owned a dog but cried like they had when they watched the clip. News anchors wiped away tears while reading Walter's closing words. He can't speak, so I did it for him. Even politicians weighed in. A senator called for a nationwide policy review of retired military dogs. Another demanded medals for all K9 units that served in combat. But Walter, he didn't do interviews. He didn't sign any book deals. He just stayed home. Quiet, humble, and Shadow. He didn't know the world was cheering. He only knew one thing. He was still home. Still beside the man he chose. Still alive. And that was enough. The weeks passed. The news faded, as it always does. But something stayed behind. Not headlines. Not hashtags. Hope. Walter sat on a bench at the edge of a field. Shadow lay beside him, head on his paws, eyes following children running in the distance. A soft breeze moved through the trees. Beside the bench, a small wooden sign had been planted. Briggs and Shadow Foundation, honoring the unspoken heroes. They had started small. Donations from strangers, letters from families, requests from vets asking, can someone help me with my retired K9? He doesn't sleep anymore. And so Walter said yes. He and Shadow traveled across the state, visiting homes, training centers, old friends with scarred arms and wagging tails. They weren't fixing the world, but they were showing up for the ones who felt forgotten. Shadow changed too. He still startled at sudden movement, still slept lightly, but now, he wagged more, barked in his sleep sometimes, ran again. People said he looked younger. Walter smiled every time someone asked, is that the dog from the trial? He'd reply, no, that's the dog who saved my life. The trial just helped me return the favor. And at night, when the world was quiet again, they sat under the stars. One man, one dog, no medals, no commands, just peace, and the soft sound of gratitude that needed no word. Before the courtroom, before the gunfire, before the medals and the wounds, there was a cage, and a man who didn't want a dog. Walter Briggs was 39. Tired. Recently promoted. Recently distant. He stood in the K-9 selection facility, arms crossed, heart shut. "You're not here to adopt, Major," the officer had said. "You're here to choose a weapon." Walter hated that word. They walked row after row, barking, growling, desperate eyes behind metal. Until they reached him. Cage 14B. No barking, no pacing, just watching. A young black German shepherd. Eyes like amber, back straight, still as silence. "This one?" Walter asked. "Won't eat, won't engage. Failed bite tests. Too calm." Walter kneeled, looked the dog in the eye. "You tired, boy?" he whispered. The dog tilted his head slowly, didn't growl, didn't back away, didn't look through him. He looked into him. Walter nodded. "This one." The officer frowned. "Name." Walter stood. "Shadow." The sun beat down on endless sand. Southern Afghanistan, a place where roads vanished into mirages and silence was a warning. Major Walter Briggs adjusted his helmet. Beside him, Shadow padded through the dust, nose low, ears alert, their first deployment together. The mission was simple on paper. Clear a checkpoint, secure a supply route, return home. But war rarely followed instructions. They were halfway through the compound when Shadow stopped, completely still. Ears forward, tail frozen, eyes locked on an old oil drum by the wall. Walter didn't hesitate. "Back," he whispered. Shadow growled. Low, controlled, then explosion. The sidewall blew. Shrapnel sliced the air. Walter hit the dirt. His left arm went numb. Blood pooled under him. He blinked. Shadow was gone. Then a shape appeared through the smoke. Shadow, dragging him by the vest collar. Muzzle burned. Left paw bleeding. Eyes wild, but focused. He pulled Walter behind a concrete slab. Pressed his body against him. Shielded. Unmoving. Unshaking. When the medics arrived, Shadow wouldn't let them near. Until Walter whispered, "He's with me. He's mine." Later, when asked what happened, Walter gave the same answer every time. "He saw it. I didn't." That's all you need to know. But what he never told anyone was this. When he thought he was dying, when the ringing in his ears drowned out everything else, the only thing he heard clearly was Shadow's heartbeat. It was late. The cabin was quiet. Firelight danced across the wooden wall. Outside, crickets sang their soft nightly hymn. Walter sat at the old kitchen table. A half-empty glass, a pen, and a folded piece of paper with the words, "In case something happens." He unfolded it, paused, then began to write. "Shadow, if someone's reading this, then I probably didn't make it home. And if that's true, it means you tried to bring me back anyway. You always do." His hand trembled slightly. "They called you a tool, a weapon, a number. But you were the only one who ever knew when I was lying. When I said I was fine. When I said the nightmare stopped. You'd curl beside me, press against my back like armor. And for a few hours I could sleep." He wiped his eyes. "You never asked why I sat outside the VA hospital every Wednesday. Never barked when I left food untouched. Never left when I didn't speak for days. You just stayed. You always stayed." The pen scratched softer now. "They might call you a hero one day. They might write stories, show videos, pin medals. But I know the truth. You're not a hero because you saved me. You're a hero because you chose me." Over and over again. He stopped, looked toward the hearth. Shadow lay curled by the fire, asleep, but not unaware. Walter folded the letter slowly and whispered, "You saved me. I saved you. And we're even now." It was a Sunday morning. Wind moved gently through the pine trees outside the cabin. Walter poured coffee. Shadow sat by the door, ears perked, not tense, just curious. Then, a knock. Walter froze. Not many people knocked anymore. He opened the door slowly. A young man stood there, tidy, nervous, in uniform. Not a full officer, but not green either. He looked like someone who had worn weight too soon. "Major Briggs?" Walter nodded. The man held out a small envelope. I was in your unit. Only for a few months. After you rotated out, I wasn't there when it happened. Walter took the envelope, didn't open it. The man continued, "But I read the trial, the article, the footage." He swallowed. "I wouldn't be here if it weren't for your dog." Walter looked confused. The man smiled, soft, distant. "You trained the next generation, sir. Shadow's techniques, his reactions. They built protocols around it." He reached into his coat, pulled out a patch. Canine Division, Tier 2 handler. Train, trust, return. "I work with one now," he said. "A German Shepherd. Not Shadow, but pretty damn close." Walter looked at Shadow now, sitting between them, silent, watching. The man looked down. "I just wanted to say thank you for all of it." Walter opened the envelope. Inside, a photo. A new handler. A new dog. Same bond. Same eyes. Same story. Still being written. Walter looked up. "Take care of him." The young man nodded. "Always." And then he was gone. Walter stepped back inside. Shadow followed, tail swaying just once. As if to say, "See? You mattered." It wasn't planned. No mission order. No objective. Just a walk. Walter pulled on his boots. The same pair from 10 years ago. Worn but still holding. Shadow waited by the door, tail low, eyes steady. They stepped into the soft afternoon, up the narrow path behind the cabin, where the trees grew thin and the wind got louder, where Walter went when the world got too loud. They walked slow. Walter's steps heavier these days. Shadow's pace gentler, deliberate. Halfway up, Walter stopped, put a hand on the old wooden post, the one he carved years ago with a pocket knife. The high ground belongs to those who earn it. He smiled faintly. Shadow stood beside him, gazing out over the valley. Rolling hills. Fences in the distance. The faint glimmer of water beyond the trees. "Remember this view?" Walter asked softly. Shadow didn't answer, but he leaned just slightly, his shoulder touching Walter's knee. They stood like that for a long time. No words. No commands. Just presence. Then Walter sat down on the stump nearby, pulled a canteen from his side pouch, took a sip, poured a little into a bowl for Shadow. The dog drank, slowly, then rested his head against Walter's boot. "I'm tired," Walter whispered. Shadow blinked, then closed his eyes. "Not from you," he added. "From the rest of it." A gust of wind moved the trees, pine needles scattered at their feet. Walter looked at the sky. Not many men get to say goodbye without regret. He looked down. "I owe that to you." Shadow didn't move, but his breath was steady. His chest rising, falling like a slow drumbeat, keeping time with Walter's words. The sun dipped lower, spilling orange across the sky like warm oil. Walter and Shadow stayed where they were, two silhouettes on a hill, etched against fading light. Shadow's breathing slowed, his head still resting on Walter's boot. Walter watched a hawk circle far above, felt the evening chill begin to settle on his shoulders. But he didn't move. He reached down, brushed his fingers through Shadow's fur. "I used to think silence meant something was wrong," he whispered. Shadow didn't open his eyes. Walter smiled. "But with you, silence always meant I was safe." The wind moved again, colder this time, gentler. Walter leaned back against the stump, the wooden carving beside him almost worn away by years of rain and wind. He closed his eyes too. Not to sleep. Not yet. Just to match the rhythm. One man, one dog, and nothing left unsaid. The flag flew at half-mast. Not by order, but by choice. The local veterans' post had gathered quietly. No cameras, no podiums, just folding chairs, worn uniforms, and hats held against chests. At the front, a wooden table. On it, Walter's service cap, a folded flag, and a leather collar engraved with one word, Shadow. The young handler from before, Private Ellis, stood to speak. He never asked for praise, he said softly. But when the bullets came, he stood in front of them. He nodded toward the collar. That dog didn't just follow commands. He made a choice. And he chose Walter. Heads bowed. An older man from Walter's former unit stepped forward. Read a letter Walter had left behind. Don't mourn us. We didn't lose anything. We had what most people never find. Trust, without question. Loyalty, without condition. And peace, when the world had none left to offer. The group remained still. Then someone whistled. Low, soft. The way Walter used to call Shadow home. And for a moment, everyone looked toward the trees, as if maybe, just maybe, they'd see a black silhouette come running one more time. Years later, a boy stands at the edge of a quiet memorial garden. He's holding his father's hand. In the distance, a bronze statue. Not tall, not grand, but powerful in its silence. A soldier kneeling, one hand on the back of a German shepherd. Both looking forward, eyes steady. Ready, always. The plaque reads, "He saved me. I saved him," in honor of all handlers and canines who stood by each other when no one else could. The boy looks up. Dad, is that real? His father nods. Yeah, their names were Walter and Shadow. Did they win? The father thinks, then smiles gently. Yes, they didn't need to fight. They just needed to stay, and they did. A breeze moves through the trees. Somewhere, far from the noise of the world, a man and a dog rest beneath the soil. But above that soil, stories are told, lives are touched, and silence is finally understood as something holy. Because some heroes don't need medals, they just need each other. And that was more than enough.